The phone slipped from his hand and hit the floor. No one picked it up. Victor Hale just stood there, staring at the screen as it dimmed, then went completely black. "Sir, should I leave it?" His voice was low, calm, empty. The assistant stepped back immediately. No one in the room dared to move again. The call had lasted less than a minute. That was all it took. A single sentence. A single confirmation. And whatever little hope had been left was gone. Victor slowly lowered himself into the chair beside him, his fingers resting loosely on the armrest. His eyes weren't focused on anything in the room. Not the towering windows. Not the expensive decor. Not the people standing around him, waiting for something. A reaction. But none came. "She's gone, sir," the assistant asked carefully. Victor didn't respond, didn't nod, didn't blink. He just sat there. And in that moment, something inside him shut down completely. "Cancel everything," he said finally. "Sir, your meetings. Everything." His tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. That was the last full conversation Victor Hale had for a very long time. Ashford Manor changed after that. It didn't happen all at once. At first, the house just became quieter. Then quieter. Then silent. Staff learned quickly. No unnecessary words. No laughter. No noise. Even footsteps became softer, slower, careful, like everyone was walking around something fragile that might break if disturbed. Victor moved through the house like a ghost. He ate when food was placed before him. Worked when documents were brought to him. Slept when exhaustion forced him to. But he didn't live. Not really. He hadn't smiled in years. Hadn't laughed. Hadn't even raised his voice. It was as if every emotion had been locked away the day he got that call. And no one knew how to reach him. Until Lena arrived. She pushed the service door open with her foot, struggling slightly with her small suitcase. "Okay, this place is huge," she muttered, stepping inside. Her voice echoed faintly. Too loud. Too alive. A few staff members turned instantly. One of them, Mrs. Daramola, hurried toward her with a sharp expression. "Lower your voice," she said quickly. Lena blinked. "Oh, sorry. I didn't realize." "You will," Mrs. Daramola cut in. Very quickly. Lena adjusted her grip on the suitcase. "Is it always this quiet here?" Mrs. Daramola didn't answer that directly. Instead, she leaned closer. "No unnecessary talking. No singing. No distractions. You do your work, and you do it quietly." Lena frowned slightly. "No singing." "No." Lena hesitated. "What if I'm just humming?" "No." "What if it's very soft humming?" Mrs. Daramola's expression didn't change. "No." Lena let out a small breath. "Okay. Strict house." Mrs. Daramola's eyes flicked briefly toward the hallway. "You haven't seen Strict yet." Lena followed her gaze. "The owner." A pause. Then a quiet nod. "He doesn't like noise," Mrs. Daramola said. "Or mistakes. Or anything out of place." Lena tilted her head slightly. "And people." Another pause. "Especially people." That should have been enough to make Lena shrink. To make her careful. But instead, she gave a small, thoughtful nod. "All right," she said. "I'll try." Mrs. Daramola studied her for a second, as if unsure whether that answer was reassuring or concerning. "You start now," she said finally. Lena nodded and followed her deeper into the house. The moment she stepped into the main hall, she felt it. The stillness. Not peaceful. Not calm. Just heavy. Like the air itself didn't move. "Wow," she whispered under her breath. "This place needs music." Mrs. Daramola stopped walking. Slowly turned. Lena raised her hands slightly. "Not actual music. I mean just You know, energy. Mrs. Daramola stared at her for a long second. Just clean, she said, then walked away. Lena exhaled. Okay, she murmured to herself. Definitely a quiet house. She tried. For the first hour, she really tried. She cleaned carefully, moved lightly, kept her lips sealed even when her thoughts begged to come out. But silence didn't come naturally to her. It crept in slowly. A tiny hum while folding sheets. A soft whisper to herself while arranging flowers. Little things. Things she didn't even realize she was doing. Until... Stop. The word cut through the air. Lena froze mid-motion. Slowly, she turned. Victor stood at the end of the corridor. Still. Watching. Her heart skipped. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't realize. Do your work, he said. His voice wasn't loud. But it didn't need to be. Without noise. Yes, sir, she said quickly. He didn't move right away. His eyes lingered on her for a moment longer, like he was trying to understand something. Then he turned and walked away. Lena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Okay, she whispered. No humming. She pressed her lips together. And for the rest of the day, she stayed completely silent. But the silence felt wrong. It pressed against her chest. Made the work feel heavier than it should have. By the second day, the struggle showed. She caught herself almost humming, then stopping, almost speaking, then biting it back. It was exhausting. By the third day, something slipped. She was in the kitchen, tasting a sauce. No, that's not right, she muttered softly. You're trying too hard. She adjusted something, tasted again, then nodded to herself. Better. She smiled faintly, unaware that Victor stood just outside the doorway, watching. He didn't step in, didn't interrupt. He just listened. Her voice was soft, light, different from anything that existed in this house. He should have walked away. He usually did. But this time, he didn't. He stood there a moment longer than necessary, then finally turned and left. That night, something felt off. Victor sat at the long dining table, his meal untouched. The silence was the same. The room was the same. Everything was exactly as it had been for years. And yet, something was different. He couldn't explain it. He picked up his fork, put it down again. For the first time in a long time, the silence felt too loud. The next few days followed a strange pattern. Lena tried to be quiet. Failed. Tried again. Failed again. A hum here. A whisper there. A soft laugh that escaped before she could stop it. And every time, Victor noticed. He never corrected her again. Never called her out. But he heard it. All of it. And slowly, something inside him began to shift. Not enough to show. Not enough to understand. But enough to notice. One evening, the house settled into its usual stillness. The staff had retreated. The halls were empty. Lena stepped into one of the larger rooms, carrying her cleaning supplies. She looked around. No one here, she said quietly. She set the supplies down and stretched her arms slightly. The silence wrapped around her again. Heavy. Unmoving. This place is too quiet, she murmured. She picked up a feather duster, twirling it lightly in her fingers. Just a little, she whispered to herself. A soft hum escaped her lips. Gentle. Carefree. Her foot tapped once. Then again. Before she realized it, she took a step. Then another. Her shoulders loosened. A small smile formed. She spun lightly, the feather duster trailing behind her like it was part of the dance. Okay, just a little fun, she said under her breath. But the moment had already taken over. For those few seconds, she wasn't in a silent mansion. She wasn't worried about rules. She was just herself. Alive. Free. and she didn't notice the figure standing at the doorway. Victor. Watching. Still as ever. But something in his expression had changed. Just slightly. Something unfamiliar. He didn't interrupt. Didn't speak. Didn't move. He just stood there. And watched her dance. Victor didn't realize he was holding his breath. Lena spun once more, then caught herself, laughing softly under her breath. Okay, that's enough before you get fired, she whispered. She slowed, adjusting her grip on the feather duster, still smiling to herself. That was when she turned. And saw him. The smile vanished instantly. Her body stiffened. The feather duster slipped slightly in her hand. Sir, I'm so sorry, she stammered, stepping back. I thought no one was. Victor stepped forward. Lena's heart pounded. This was it. She'd gone too far. She braced herself. I can explain, she rushed. It won't happen again, Why? She blinked. Sir. Why were you smiling? His voice wasn't angry. That confused her more than anything. She hesitated. I didn't think. That's not what I asked. There was something different in his tone now. Not harsh. Not cold. Just searching. Lena swallowed. Then, slowly, she answered. Because I was happy. The words hung in the air. Victor's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted. Doing that? He asked. She gave a small, nervous nod. Yes, sir. A pause. He looked at her, really looked at her. Not like a worker. Not like a problem. But like something he didn't understand. How? He asked quietly. Lena frowned slightly. How what? How can something so small make you happy? There it was. Not anger. Not authority. A question. A real one. Lena hesitated, then spoke carefully. I don't know, she admitted. It just does. Victor stared at her. That answer didn't make sense to him. It was too simple. Too easy. But somehow, it felt heavier than anything else she could have said. I'm sorry, sir, Lena added quickly. I know the rules. I won't do it again. Victor didn't respond immediately. He just stood there. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Lena let out a shaky breath. What just happened? She whispered. The next morning felt different. Not in a loud way. Not in an obvious way. But something had shifted. Victor entered the dining hall as usual. Sat down. The staff moved as they always did. Quiet, precise, invisible. Lena stood farther back, keeping her head down. No humming. No movement beyond what was necessary. She wasn't taking any chances. Victor noticed. Of course he did. He glanced in her direction briefly, then back at his plate. Silence filled the room again. But this time, it felt incomplete. He picked up his fork. Paused. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he said, You can continue your work. Lena looked up slightly, confused. Sir. Victor didn't meet her eyes. As you were. A small pause. Lena hesitated. Then, very softly, a hum. Barely there. Like she was testing the air. No one moved. Victor didn't react. So she continued. Quietly. Carefully. But it was there. And somehow, the room didn't feel as heavy. The days that followed changed slowly. Victor began lingering in places longer than necessary. Standing near doorways. Pausing in hallways. Listening. Lena didn't notice at first. She went back to her natural rhythm. Working, humming, occasionally speaking under her breath. One afternoon, she nearly dropped a stack of folded linens. Whoa, okay, that would have been bad, she muttered, catching them just in time. Victor, standing just outside the room, almost smiled. But the moment passed. Still, something had cracked. Later that evening, he found himself standing in front of a large window. The sun was setting. Golden light spilled into the room. He hadn't stood there in years. Not since. He stopped the thought. His jaw tightened slightly. Then, a faint hum. Behind him. He didn't turn right away. He just listened. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't push it away. You don't like silence, do you? Lena froze. She turned slowly. Sir, I didn't realize you were. That's not what I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head slightly. No, I don't. Why? She gave a small shrug. It feels lonely. The word landed heavier than she expected. Victor's gaze shifted slightly. Lonely. He knew that word too well. And noise doesn't? He asked. Lena thought for a moment. No, she said softly. Noise reminds me that I'm not alone. Silence. Victor turned his head slightly, just enough to glance at her. And what if you are? He asked. Lena met his gaze for the first time. Then I make my own noise. Another simple answer. Another one that didn't make sense. And yet, did. Victor looked away. But this time, he didn't leave. The conversations didn't happen all at once. They came in pieces. Small. Unexpected. A question here. A response there. Nothing long. Nothing deep. But enough. Enough to change something. Victor started sitting in rooms where Lena worked. Not speaking. Just present. At first, she found it awkward. Then confusing. Then normal. One afternoon, she caught him watching her again. You do that a lot, she said without thinking. Victor blinked. Do what? Watch, she said simply. A pause. I observe, he corrected. Lena smiled faintly. Same thing. He didn't argue. That evening, something happened. Something small. But significant. Lena laughed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a soft, genuine laugh at something she said to herself. Victor heard it. And before he could stop himself, a sound escaped him. Short. Sharp. Unfamiliar. He froze. Lena froze. They both stared at each other. Was that? Lena started. Victor looked away immediately. But it was too late. It had happened. A laugh. After years of nothing. A laugh. Lena's eyes widened slightly. You laughed, she said softly. Victor didn't respond. But his expression. It wasn't empty anymore. Not completely. I'm sorry, she added quickly. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. The words came out firmer than expected. They both paused. Victor exhaled slowly. Then, quieter. Don't apologize. Lena nodded. A small smile forming again. Days later, the change became undeniable. Victor spoke more. Not much. But more. He asked questions. Listened to answers. Stayed in rooms longer. Even corrected staff without that cold distance he once had. And then, one morning, Lena. She turned immediately. Yes, sir. A pause. Victor hesitated. Then said something no one in the house expected. Thank you. The room stilled. Lena blinked. For what? Victor looked at her. And for the first time in years, there was something human in his eyes. For the noise. Silence followed. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Lena smiled softly. You're welcome, she said. Victor gave a small nod. Not formal. Not distant. Just real. Ashford Manor changed after that. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But steadily. The silence didn't disappear. It softened. Laughter didn't echo through every hall. But it existed. And Victor lived again. Not the way he used to. Not loudly. Not fully. But enough. Enough to feel. Enough to remember. Enough to move forward. And sometimes, when the house grew quiet, a faint hum would drift through the halls. And this time, Victor didn't stop it. He listened. If you felt something shift in this story, if it reminded you how powerful small moments can be, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes, it's the smallest sound that brings a life back.